Welcome to Let's Talk Customer Success. I'm Thibaut, and I'm here with Dave Becerra. Dave spent years helping software companies not just get customers, but keep them and turn them into huge fans. So I'm really excited to dive into his experience today to speak customer success. So let's start with maybe your background, and can you tell us more about you, Dave?
Yeah, sure. I guess thanks for having me first, Thibaut. Excited to talk about this topic with you. But yeah, myself. So my name is David Becerra. To begin with, I've had sort of a very varied and diverse career, I guess I should say, and how I got into customer success. But initially, I'd co-founded a data visualization mobile BI company / product. This was sort of like late 2000s. And I did that for quite a amount of time, about 8 or 9 years, and kind of rode the waves of a typical startup, from launching a new product in a market to venture capital funding to growing teams and expanding internationally. All the good and bad times that you have typically in in sort of a startup environment. From there, we were lucky and fortunate enough to be acquired. And so we moved, the product and the team moved on into a larger organization, large global software company called SAP. So that's when I kind of had my official transition into customer success. Before that startup, you kind of just wear many hats. So I realized I'd actually been doing customer success for a while. We didn't really call it that. It was just, in the startup, you're kind of, like I said, wearing a lot of different hats. So when I moved over to SAP, that actually became the moment I had, more of a, I guess you'd call it now, a traditional like customer success management role. I moved over to Europe. I'm originally from the US. I started managing accounts here. I was an individual contributor for, maybe 3 to 4 years, managing large enterprise customers across Europe. Different regions, mainly focused on analytics. That was my background, was coming from analytics and business intelligence. So I was focused on just customers who were deploying these sort of enterprise analytics across the organization. Did that for a few years. That turned into a really, really nice opportunity at this company to help build what at that time was called, I guess it's called the same now, but a digital / low touch customer success organization, right? Very common now. I think at that time, it was still very new within the organization, but essentially was, how to create a successful customer success model that didn't require you to just scale with headcount, right? It was how to use data, signals, automation, how, you could go from having one CSM that was managing maybe 10 to 20 accounts, but how could they manage 60 to 70, especially these long tail customers who, maybe made a small investment up front, right? They weren't like the big ARR customers from day one, but they had potential for growth. And so how you grew those customers and identified them and helped, grow them at scale in a sense. So that was a project that lasted a few years, and I got to build and manage and run a team, which is a great experience for me to do that within, it was a strange sensation because it felt like we were kind of operating like a scale up because it was a brand new organization we built from scratch. But we had the resources, around us in a larger organization. So that was a really, really great experience to see how to build something again within a large organization. So I did that for a few years. Yeah. And eventually, ended up taking some personal time after that. That had been a long run from like startup to, moving into other roles in customer success. I took some time off for myself, did a bit of traveling, a bit of surfing, which is something I been doing since I was quite young. So I wanted to spend a little more time doing those things. And eventually that landed me through happenstance. I thought I was going to come back and then, get back into customer success right away and kind of continue my career that way. And I ended up managing a surf and wellness retreat in Indonesia. So I jumped into hospitality sort of unplanned. But I ended up doing that for 2 years, of which that just sort of finished a few months ago. But that was a really cool experience for me and interesting to see how much my background and customer experience and customer success was, very related to like what you do in hospitality. I mean, in a way, it was customer success, but just more intense, right? It was face-to-face, people, experiences, pretty much 6-7 days a week, sometimes 24/7. But a very rewarding experience, I would say, after spending so many years in tech to then actually get to spend time with real people and be part of their experience. And yeah, that was kind of
That's
what
great.
landed to where I am today.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that intro. That gives a lot of context already, and we're going to come back to some of these experiences that you've mentioned. But I mean, first, let's keep and start with the basic. How will you explain customer success to someone who's never heard about it?
That's a really good question because I have to explain it a lot to a lot of people that don't know what it is. Ultimately, customer success, it's really about deriving business outcomes, right, for a customer. And I guess that's regardless if you're in software, you're in hospitality. But that we would talk, I guess, in software, we'd say business outcomes or value realization. That's probably not a word that you would say to someone, in hospitality was value realization. But ultimately, underneath all that is, you want customers to feel like they want to come back, right? That they had a great experience, that they're, in their eyes, getting a great value for what they paid or what they invested in. And if it's in the context of software, it could even be hospitality, but that they're getting the outcomes they expected from the investment, right? So I guess you could call it ROI, you could call it outcomes, but that they're getting that from what they were able to put in, which of those, time, monetary value that they put into this project or whatever it is, that they're deriving those outcomes.
Okay, very clear. And what do people usually misunderstand about customer success?
Yeah, that's very common. Whether surprisingly, even in the SaaS industry, it's still something you have to explain a lot, either to customers or even within I've been in organizations where you have to even explain your role and what it is you do, because it's one of these roles I think that touches so many different, right? It's great cross training. I think like it's probably one of the best cross training fields of study or like in a work environment you can have, because you are so cross functional. You're working with support, product, sales. You're talking, business with a customer. You're in some cases speaking with marketing. Like you're really touching so many different parts of the business, which is great. I think that also is part of the challenge and one of the things that's mostly either undervalued or maybe misinterpreted, which is, when everything goes wrong, right, and there's just a mess somewhere in aisle 4, they're like, well, that's your job to go fix it, right? So I think that's something that's very, misinterpreted, is that our job is just to fix everything. Whereas what we're really doing is making sure that we're being proactive and making sure we're driving outcomes that the customer is looking for. But it's very, very often, mixed with like a combination, like, are you sales? Are you support? Somewhere in between there is usually what I see that people are very confused about and where the misconceptions lie.
Yeah. And where do you see the good customer success managers or leaders coming from? Is it more from that sales department, from products, from all the support?
Yeah, I mean, it could be from any of those, right? I think it's just someone that comes across with the right mindset. I mean, I've seen some people come in from product that could be really good at customer success because they understand the product so well. I think coming from sales is a big, I'm seeing especially sort of a trend now as companies and teams are getting leaner, and AI is kind of automating a lot of the processes. Being able to have that commercial acumen to have a discovery call, but to really be able to speak to in the case of hospitality, right? If I'm selling hospitality software, I really should understand the business of who's buying and the decision makers, not just the technical side of implementing this product, but the problems it's solving, the ROI they're getting from it. So having sort of I think coming from a sales background, I've seen gives you the best sort of base. Everything else you can learn product stuff, you can learn a few different things. But if you've got a good base in discovery and having conversations, and asking good questions, which you tend to do a lot in sales, then I think you can be very successful in customer success as well.
All right. Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks a lot. So let's now try to jump into the customer life cycle. and where customer success plays a role. So now, what does winning look like for you for, let's say, for a software customer?
Yeah, I think ultimately, at least, so internally, if we're selling the software, maybe I'll talk about what success looks like, as us,
Okay.
if working in a software company, and then maybe for the customer. If I'm a CSM or I'm managing a CSM team, I mean, for us, success ultimately, you're measured, and we'll probably get into a discussion about metrics, but having a solid net revenue retention number is sort of the benchmark that every SaaS company tries to get to, right? So if we're operating at like maybe 120, 130% of net revenue retention, again, if I'm looking at it from the lens of like I'm a software vendor, and what does good look like? I mean, that's sort of the gold standard, right? To be able to get to those numbers of net revenue retention. And I'll say those numbers mainly because what that means is if I'm a software company and operating at 120% of NRR, it basically means if my sales are flat for the next year, we're still growing at a 20% rate just from our base, right? I think any company would love that. So I mean, I would consider great. I would consider success from that perspective. I can certainly dive into what it looks like from a customer perspective if that's more what you're looking for.
No, but just before we dive into this customer perspective, tell me more about these 120%. And so, what are the growth coming? Where's the growth coming from? It's from new things that you are able to sell, new seats, new services. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it would be an expansion, either an upsell or cross-sell of more seats, or maybe it's a cross-sell of different products within the product line. But all just coming from our existing base, and that should be driven by in the best customer success organizations, they're revenue influenced or revenue driven. So even if they're not the ones necessarily closing the deal, because there's a lot of overlap with account management and sales, but the fact that they're able to really influence or discover that deal or influence a large part of it, not just necessarily taking orders, but do that discovery and pushing for that. The best customer success managers and teams are able to manage that and to drive that. And that, again, seeing more and more the importance of that in companies as they're growing is, especially now, I mean, there's a massive trend right now of new sales sort of lagging a little bit, right? Because there's, for a lot of different reasons, macroeconomic reasons, AI, there's more time being taken to make decisions because of all the changes that are happening so rapidly right now, that more than ever, it's been more important to how much can we grow with our existing customer base. So the better you do that, the longer, the better the unit economics work, the better your valuation is going to be as a company. And ultimately, the more, success and bigger seat at the table you're going to have within the customer success organization.
Okay, great. And so now if you put your customer hats, and if you put yourself in the shoes of a customer, what does winning look like for a customer?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination. It feels more like a partnership than it is anything else, right? If I'm and I've used many other software tools as well, so I've been a customer of different SaaS or recurring revenue products, and for me, winning looks like that I feel supported the entire time, that there's someone at the other end, right? It's not just a fully data-driven application, but there's a human on the other side who has had a conversation with me, who understands the goals that I'm trying to reach and my outcomes. And ultimately it just feels like they're guiding me towards those resolutions. And we're always talking about like the impact on my business, right? And they understand my business, my challenges. Often what happens, and it's, it's a problem we all fall into, and it's certainly it's been a challenge I've fallen into as well. But when we think from a software perspective, we think in our metrics, our timelines, this is, success for us. But companies operate on whole different timelines, and so really being able to step into the shoes of the customer, when I feel someone really understands my business and has a good conversation with what challenges I'm trying to solve, then I feel like I'm supported, and it just makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, we bought this software for a reason. We didn't just buy it because we did no research. But when they really feel like they're not driving their agenda, but they're really on board with what my agenda and my goals are, that's when I've felt like everything kind of happens naturally. The renewal, the expansion, whatever it may be, but we're sort of partnering more than we are, I would say like feeling like I've been sold something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And where do companies, and here I'm talking about also software vendors, so software companies usually fail first?
Hmm. I'd say an area that I felt like in my experience from what I've seen, the thing in customer success is you can do everything right and still not get it right. I mean, that's something you always have to keep in mind. It's totally normal. You're not going to always renew 100% of your customer base, even if things look good. So you can do everything right and still lose a customer, but I definitely think there's some things that if you don't do right, you're really doing yourself a disservice to make sure that customer renews. And I think one of the ones that, I've learned a few different times through my different experiences is kind of that initial, you want to call it time to value. It's on board. It's like the transition from sales over to CS into, time to value, I would say is like that great metric, some TTV, sometimes they call it, is how long from that time when they buy the software, when they have momentum, are you getting to that value point where they can realize some value? It doesn't have to be the full gamut, but whether it's a go live or whatever that initial project is, but essentially you're not losing momentum. I think when you miss that, and we've certainly missed it at different times, but when the momentum breaks and then, the project stalls and then it stalls and then it gets pushed, something like that, you're really setting yourself up for more work later on and really having to undo all of that. One of the best sort of metaphors or visualizations I maybe to describe it that I think works well in great organizations that I've been a part of, where kind of sales and customer success have this really nice transition and handoff. It's almost like when you're, the relay race in the Olympics, right? The 100 meters, whatever it is. One guy's running and then the other guy already starts running and there's zero momentum when he passes the baton and then keeps running. And I feel like that's how you want to operate ideally, is that you're not, the customer doesn't feel any transition from like, a deal was closed and then now you're going to this person and like, you don't lose the momentum. Again, they bought the software. You want to make sure you're getting that project, that go live relatively quickly. If you're running the 100-meter race and you stop or you drop the baton, it breaks all the momentum. And it really sometimes can, I don't want to say set you up for failure, but you're starting off on the bad foot, and that can really just make it really challenging to get things where you want to get to. So that's one area that I feel if you do it well, you're setting yourself up for better things later on.
So does it mean that, if you go back to your analogy of this race, I mean, does it mean that as a customer success manager, let's say you start running with the salesperson before the deal is closed?
Yeah, I think the best organizations, and of course it gets very challenging as you scale and the bigger company, you have to have processes very optimized to do it. But I think the best organizations understand that you have to have that transition, right? The same way, like from marketing, it goes to sales closes the deal, and then it moves over to us. Like the customer it shouldn't feel like they're just kind of moving from one place to another. It feels like one seamless transition. But yeah, absolutely. There should be a lot of collaboration between sales and we're already getting a heads up, on use cases and the who's who, and we're not losing time on trying to do all that stuff. And, there's a lot that can be done there.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay, so can you tell me about the best onboarding experience that you've ever either seen as a customer or built as a provider?
Yeah, I'm biased to say that maybe we did something really good
Yeah.
when we were at our startup called Rombi. And it wasn't because we were so brilliant. It's because we were actually doing it really wrong. And we're like, we have to fix it. But it's very related to this sort of this time to value and this onboarding process, right? Where I think we were selling products sometimes to big customers. And again, there was that initial real excitement around our product. We had a really nice sort of visual product that people really fell in love with, and they wanted to get something, see it with their data and present it to their executives or their leadership team. But we often found that when one metric we tracked was how long it took to publish one of these visualizations, right? And the longer it took, the more like, the momentum kind of went down and the more it shifted. And ultimately, it just didn't really become as sticky. And we found that we were churning a lot of customers when we didn't have, let's say, like a visualization built within the first 30 days. That like became our goal. So one of the things that we turned around was we kind of made it, say, mandatory to have this, what we called like an activation package, where we would partner with one of our, like we had a Rombi product expert, one of our product experts, consultant services people who would be part of every deal. And it was kind of like you had to buy it. And we even, I think, even commissioned some of our salespeople to sell it as well. Even though we lost a little bit of more margin on it, we knew that the long tail of that would be that the product would go live faster. You would get into their hands. They would see and feel right on their visualization and be able to show it around. And that was kind of that point where, like, all right, again, that didn't confirm 100% the renewal, but we got, we passed the baton, as going back to that metaphor, as smooth as we could. And that really helped. We saw a pretty big reduction in early churn. I would say like 10 or 15% of churn kind of went down after we were starting to sell those packages. So we'll tip our hat to say that we didn't do it right initially, but we learned from it and did it right the second time.
Okay, that's great. And so again, on that experience, which I understand was, very interesting learning from, a failure and then transforming that into a success. What was the most challenging? Was it changing the culture of the company or putting the right processes, the tools? And can you tell me about that?
Sure. Are you referring to like our company, like how we
Yes.
changed and
Yeah.
adapted?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, we specifically started as an on-prem company. So we kind of went through this dual, it was almost like two parallel companies. Looking back on it now, we started selling on premise. We had a small cloud product. But eventually, our goal, and, one of the reasons we were able to secure funding and have these great projections is, we had a great initial on-prem product and great logos, and we were growing. But we also wanted to grow our cloud products and move companies over to a subscription model, and just the unit economics of SaaS, which are so great. And you can, if we could take that same growth that we were having on prem and apply it to cloud, we would have a company that we would be really happy with. But there was a lot of challenges. Everything specifically from on-prem to cloud is it's two different worlds almost that you're selling through. Making that transition, how you, in some ways, incentivize sales, right? That was a big thing. How we have CS working with our sales team. We didn't even have a CS team originally. I think we just had support. That's all we needed. So we actually created a customer success team. I think we called it Customer for Life originally. Maybe that was an early ode to Salesforce, because I think that's how they began as well. But yeah, it really it was a big change in terms of how we operated. When you're working in sales and you're looking to make the most commission possible, you're looking at how to close big deals and sell everything, further up front. The more seats, the better. We move over to SaaS, people are kind of just buying what they need and they can buy as they go, right? So there's a big shift in that from, how do we keep salespeople incentivized or incent them to sell the right thing or sell the right way, we should say, and not just sell shelfware. And even think about, like, should there be penalties for selling shelfware? Should there be penalties for selling bad deals? Because that can really kill a company, and that can really be hidden in a lot of new sales. But if it's coming out the other end, you're losing money on every sale. So it's really can be a bit deceptive, when with these new logo acquisitions. So going back to your question, it was a big challenge, a cultural challenge more than anything, to switch from an on-prem to a cloud customer, which is why so many, companies are one or the other. Trying to do both is really a difficult exercise. And, we didn't really fully, not survive, but we never reached in our model, the same, I guess, success you would say of like selling and what that looked like in one model versus selling and expanding and renewing in a whole different one. Really changed the game. And in a way, it's really good that it works that way, because, in subscription, you can't hide behind the metrics, right? In the old world of on-prem, you could sell a big deal, have a maintenance contract, and on paper, everything looks good. But when you're every year being evaluated of, am I getting value out of this? Do I need to downsell a few seats? It really gives much better insight into the valuation of a product and of a company. So there's a reason why SaaS products for years were, and SaaS companies were valued so high. Is the unit economics can be just tracked so perfectly, especially when it comes to churn, retention, and growth.
Okay, great. And so can you tell me maybe a story or about how you've managed to turn a dissatisfied customer into a satisfied one, and eventually into an advocate for your products? Do you have any story about that?
Yeah. And I'll say it's funny. Like I feel like it's actually easier to turn a dissatisfied customer into a proponent, because if they're dissatisfied and they're angry, that it's not a good thing, but it means that they're trying to use the product, right? And we'll probably talk about it later, but like the secret killers, the people that are just kind of like silent, or yeah, everything's okay, and they don't really care. Those are the ones, they're really hard to turn around. We either have people that are advocates from day one, or you have people who, really struggle, but they're loud enough that you can do something about it. So I recall a few times, and I still think about our director of support. His name was AJ Duty, great guy, and he was just so good at turning around customers like that. It was almost like one of these things we built our ethos and support around, turning these, let's say angry customers into some of our best advocates, because honestly, we saw that as just a big opportunity. So just being able to, spend time with them, listen to them, what's the issue, and being able to resolve it in a way is, for us, at least, in our experience, startup, and maybe we had the luxury of being a small company, so you could kind of do a lot of these things. But we had some of them become of our best advocates that started off as not very good. They were not having whether it was a good implementation or whatever it was. But again, the signal for us, and for me, keeps being, I think it's good if you have people, opening up a lot of tickets, or again, being loud and telling you that they're unhappy with it, because that's an opportunity to go change it. And most people want to change it, right? They're being that way because they want help, they want support, they're just looking for it. They're not, like I said, if you're just kind of quiet and off radar, that to me, that's a bit more concerning and harder to engage with.
Okay, thanks. Great experience. So you mentioned tickets, and you've mentioned how to keep track, follow the usage, and so on for your different customers. So I guess it's a good time to start talking about tools now.
Sure.
And I'd like to get your feedback on the and tools that work for you. And please feel free to explain them as generic, but also to name a few if you want, and then we can also get deeper into some of them and why you really like these tools, or why you believe they've been transformational to your business.
Yeah, sure. I can talk about a few. And I guess maybe I'll start by saying tools can be great. And there's a lot of tools, and there's more tools now, gosh, than ever. So it's really hard to evaluate even which are the best. But I'll say that my experience generally, before I go into like specifics, it's really how well you implement the tool can really make the difference. Because you see a lot of features and functionality, but it really comes down to the details of how your organization operates, and that the tool can sort of adapt to that. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, we used, we were still a startup, and we were using Salesforce both for sales and for post sales, right? And we were nimble and small enough to be able to create custom fields, and it worked for us in sort of customer for life, customer success. Salesforce was enough for what we needed to use it. In combination, we had another, I think, a marketing tool called Marketo, which helped us with customer marketing and customer lifetime marketing initiatives. So it covered a lot of our bases. As we get into like bigger organizations, I've worked, like I said, at SAP, where we're using other tools like Tatango, which is a CS platform built just for customer success, because it's just such a massive organization. And those tools can work, but again, I've had experiences where if they're not implemented correctly, or maybe they work for certain use cases, but a lot of the times, yeah, when you end up having a task for a feature, like, can you export this into Excel? That means there's something off with the tool, right? That's sort of a marker if you're going from there into Excel, but pretty common across a lot of different tools. But yeah, I would say for like CS, CRM, we use Salesforce. I've had some use cases with Tatango. Some were good, some not so good, but I think we had very sort of specific needs on how it was implemented that didn't really work for us. That's sort of on the CRM side. One of the tools I can recall that actually helped us a lot in customer success was a tool called Mixpanel, which really helped sort of on getting analytics and insight into specific usage and product features. So we could actually see like what features are being activated and things like that, because data can be deceiving. There's sometimes where you look at data and it can tell you can interpret one story, and you can even have processes based on that story, and that's not even what's happening behind the scenes. So when we were running a scale organization, we relied heavily on data, and we just didn't have it. We didn't have usage data or which product features are being adopted. We were doing a lot of things. We were having high activity, but it's really hard to, tie that and correlate that to an outcome of a renewal or of churn, right? Because X, Y, Z. But we spent a good amount of time implementing this tool called Mixpanel that gave our CSMs and everyone a much better insight into which specific features and usage the customers were using. And that just drove better decisions, more contextual decisions that helped us really identify risk a bit early, but also identify upsell and cross-sell opportunities as well. And that actually led to, we were able to quantify it for like a 10% reduction in churn over a few years after we implemented that. So we really went from zero to having some insight. And yeah, I mean, in CS, whether it's scale or not, like data, you really need access to good data to be able to scale an organization and make sort of the right calls on a day-to-day basis. Trying to think what else. CRM, we talked about analytics. We use for support. I remember we were big users of Zendesk. That was years ago though. I mean, I think now there's so many different support tools, but they were sort of the de facto. They were still growing at that time, and now obviously they're like one of the biggest players in the space. For me, again, I wasn't working in support, but in CS, you kind of have to sometimes know your way around Zendesk, just navigate it. I always found it was a very easy product to use, easy to understand. And I remember their support was great. Like they were actually really good helpers of us being able to implement and use their tools. So yeah, that's all that come to mind for right now.
Okay, yeah. And so what if you think about these different super important tools that you just mentioned, so the Mixpanel, for example, what's the let's say the one feature that's had disproportionate impacts on success for you?
Yeah, I'd have to probably say Mixpanel. Yeah, Mixpanel, like the analytics and the usage was so critical that it had an impact. I mean, we quantified the impact, but it changed kind of the way we approach customers. It changed our day-to-day, our workflows, and just actually gave us insight into what type of conversations and who we needed to reach out to, especially in the scale organization where, you've got 60 to 80 customers. You can't just, go one by one. You have to have sort of signals telling you like, hey, this is an important, this is coming up. This is a conversation or something that needs to happen sooner than later. So I think Mixpanel is probably the most, the one where I saw the biggest change, at least from where we were, which was like, we knew that they bought the software. We knew how many seats were being used, but in terms of usage and utilization, we had zero visibility. And so that was, we were going kind of from zero. So it was probably and that was a big reason why we felt the biggest impact is we really were operating almost blindly to having at least some visualization of what was going on.
Okay, so it helps you to detect wrong behaviors of customers or wrong usage of the tool, I guess. And then how do you engage with the customers on that? Do you regularly organize, kind of, customer success reviews with them and having these discussions to share also what you can see from that tool of their usage of the software?
Yeah. It was a combination. We had, we had our sort of high touch team. We had this low touch team, which was what I was looking after. And then we had a full digital team as well, where everything was automated, because you had some customers that were just, very, very low ARR. They were buying from a digital store. So we had a combination of different models of touch. But that data, right, that we could then use was really useful for our digital customers, right? Because we could automate these things that, again, it would be better to have a human touch, but in reality, you're just not going to be able to you're not always going to be able to have a human talk to every single customer. That really helped sort of at least guide customers in a certain direction that we could see, like if they were not using feature X, which we knew was sort of a big sort of activation key that would drive more adoption and usage. We could cluster all those customers in one cohort and have, information or marketing could send out a message about that specific feature, or, hey, there's a webinar about this feature, you're not using this. So it really helped have more like data-driven automation, right, and communication to that customer base. But it also helped even like in our segment or even in the high touch segment, because it gave, maybe even if the customers weren't receiving that on their own, it gave CSMs that insight to be like, to have a human interaction, but contextually around, Thibaut, I see you're not using this product feature. Did you know this or that? Why don't we set up a call next week so we can dive into it a little bit more? So it was being able to combine data, but also with the human touch that really helped in those higher touch segments as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right. So, well, we have covered already quite a lot on software and how customer success can have an impact, and also the tools that you've been using. And I like to spend more time on your surf camp experience, which is, first fun from and so different from the corporate world. So I like to get your perspective and how you started there, but also how you've been experiencing and managing a very different business, hospitality, probably without the right set of tools. But yeah, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. Where can I begin on that one? I mean, again, it was kind of an unplanned deviation from where I thought I would be, but through just happenstance, right, an opportunity came up, and I kind of jumped on it. And I had never managed a hospitality business. I mean, I've been surfing my whole life, so I know what that's like, and I know I can definitely speak to that, or I could say I know enough about it to help others and teach others. But as far as running a full hospitality business, that was a new leap for me. But I kind of felt like I was like, I'll just figure it out as I go, So I kind of jumped straight into the deep end. And yeah, it was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks of onboarding before the other general manager was there. And I kind of saw how things operated, got an idea of like how the business runs, what are the key metrics. But my focus a lot was on the guest experience, right? A lot of like the operational stuff that was going on. This specific retreat had been in operation for a while. So it was kind of making sure that just stayed the pace. But really how to improve the guest experience and managing a cross-cultural team, right? I mean, I was the only, this was based in Indonesia, and I was, managing a full staff of Indonesians, and I didn't speak any Indonesian at the time, still only speak a little bit. So there was a lot of, how to build trust with a brand new team, and how to get, rally us all behind, one goal of making this a great experience for our guests. So yeah, that was looking back, I mean, we didn't really have any tools or processes. Like I said, the thing was running. It's not like it was, but we just didn't really have any metrics, right? We weren't looking at, how many customers are return customers, what's the onboarding experience like? So we started with some basic stuff. Like you mentioned tools, like, yeah, we didn't have tools. We didn't even have a reservation system. Everything was done via WhatsApp, email, Instagram, very manual. So it did make things very tough. In fact, I can recall a few times where, someone showed up and was looking for a room, and we had double booked a room because all of this was, through emails and very prone to manual error. So it's funny going from like, again, working in like SaaS in software from like, VCs from Silicon Valley, like the most technology driven environments that I had come from, to basically being like, yeah, all this is done manually and with zero process. So the good news is there was a lot that we could build on, and a lot of being that I've always been not a technical person, but at least close enough to technology to know there's a lot of tools that can help a lot of things. We were able to implement a few things. In fact, I began implementing the reservation system so that everything could be done manually. And that was a huge reduction in like time, in in money, right? We're paying someone else to manage all this stuff via email, and yeah, just made things a whole lot cleaner and easier. So yeah, we got to implement a lot of tools that way. I mean, I learned a lot about onboarding too, right? I learned a lot about how I took all these experiences from customer success and kind of morphed them or adapted them to what it meant, like what customer success felt like in this specific surf retreat and surf hotel. And, one of the things that I learned, which helped a lot, was this concept of just, I don't want to call it over communication, but if people showed up to the hotel and they're here for a week experience, they don't really want to think, right? They don't want to think like what's coming next, or, am I supposed to do something this afternoon? So we implemented this really nice sort of like everyone would arrive on a Saturday. We would have like a pizza night, right? We'd order pizzas for everybody. I'd kind of give like an overview of like what the week was going to look like. Here's what to expect. Also a little bit of expect the unexpected, because this is also like, Indonesian, things go wrong. It's part of the journey, but here's generally what you can expect of 80% is going to happen. And we might have some deviations. Again, this is surfing, right? You're dealing with like weather, with the ocean. Sometimes it rains, sometimes you wake up, there's a flat tire, the road is flooded. So you have to be a little bit adaptable, but even just setting that tone for the beginning of like, guys, this is part of the adventure. Like, this is why you're here is, we're going to do all these cool things. And if something goes wrong, we're going to like, call a last minute change and do it a different way.
This is the activation service that you were mentioning earlier in software, no?
Exactly. This is the activation service, and sort of just prepping for it, right? Like, I think if we're customers of many tools, and I think expectations are really important in anything in life. And being able to set the expectations from day one, here's what's going to happen, or what we think is going to happen, or what you can expect from us. I could know people, I just received less questions. That was sort of a metric I had. Otherwise, like I'd be like getting, WhatsApps in the middle of the night. What's happening here? What are we doing here? And what's happening there? And so like, we just created we're like, let's knock it all out on day one. Everyone gets together. It also gets an opportunity for them to all like, meet each other and have like a bonding experience. So it's like, what we found is the faster that moment happened. And this is similar to what we talked about in software as it relates, but like that moment of like activation or moment of like value for us was kind of like, if we have 20 people come in a week, the faster we get to them sort of bonding with each other and having this moment of like, oh, cool. Like they, you're from here, you do this for work, and they exchange Instagrams. Like that's where we really felt the week started rolling a lot easier, right? It was kind of like breaking the ice for them to just connect and relax, be like, you're on vacation, you don't have to worry about anything. So that's why we moved like, that created kind of like that pizza night. We go over everything. We order pizza, everyone has a good time. And it kind of just sets the tone for the week, right? We kind of, it kind of becomes this icebreaker environment where people like just get in, pizza, relax, here's what's going to happen. It's all good. Whereas before, if we weren't doing that, it's just people check in, they go to their rooms, maybe they get a WhatsApp at night. There's trepidation, right? There's people that just come in and be like, oh, what's happening tomorrow? Or like, what can I expect? Or things like that. So it gave us a really good opportunity to do that. And we measured it, right? I mean, we started implementing customer feedback forms, what worked, what areas can we improve on? That like, yeah, if you want to call it the activation service and the onboarding, that really helped. And not just from the feedback we got, but I could sense it too. Like I said, I was just getting less questions throughout the week, right? People were more expecting the unexpected than they were before.
Yeah. So if you look back at that experience, what are the, let's say, the learnings that you had from that surf camp experience that you will apply to software? I mean, vice versa, you told, but I mean, from that perspective, what did you learn that, for you is a good learning also for how SaaS companies are managing their customers?
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of crossover between both. And it's not necessarily new things, right? Like that I think I would take from that I learned at the surf camp that are novel for SaaS. But what I mean is like they're actually really similar. It's more the importance of it, right? Like the onboarding, the activation, like clearly something that you have to do, the time to value, the time to that moment where whether it's an activation or whatever, product you're selling, but where that first value is realized, right? That's sort of one thing that going back into SaaS now is like critical, and how we identify that point and how we make sure we get there and how we measure it. So we're making sure that that's a metric that again that we're aspiring to, right? This sort of time to value. Something else that became really apparent in the Surf Camp, and this was something I learned more in customer success, but it kind of gave me validation to know that it works both ways, was being able to say no to customers, right? And this goes back to even what we talked about earlier about what's the biggest misconception about customer success. And many times people just think it's like, make your customer happy, right? And happiness doesn't always equal renewal or expansion or outcome. And it's something really easy we can fall into. And a lot of us get into customer success because we genuinely are, either empathic people or we want to help others and we really enjoy that process. But you have to have that ability to draw the boundary and draw the lines and not let them drive your agenda, but you're building that trust to drive the agenda for them. And this is something I did at the Surf Camp constantly, right? Because again, I was in charge of an experience every week, week after week for a group of 30 people. I had to make decisions on, what I think is best for them at their surf level, or, what I think is fun, but also safe, but also where they're going to learn. Right. And I always thought if I could hit those three things, that's how I see it. Right. And if they have an off day, I'm looking at the entire week, right? I'm looking at sort of the totality. So many times I have to push back on them as well. You have to do it in a way that's very, friendly and non-threatening, same way you do in SaaS with customers. But if in SaaS, if you let customers drive the agenda, or you're always saying yes from day one, or always being available 24/7, you sort of set yourself up for failure in a way. And I would say that's, again, both in hospitality, but really important in SaaS. And probably the last one I'll mention, again, not a new concept, but it was really fun seeing like how all of these things existed in both worlds for me. I was like, I feel like I was living parallel lives, but it's a concept of, we talked a little bit about advocates, right? And advocates are so important. And the amount of times we had someone come to the Surf Camp where we're just like, yeah, I heard about this through a friend, right? Or like my friend told me this was a great experience. And that was like, we started measuring, actually, like, let's start measuring our return customers and create like some sort of loyalty, because we had people coming back, but we had no loyalty programs installed. I mean, we had this one guy who celebrated his 70th birthday with us. He comes every year, like for 5 years, he would come straight, celebrate his 70th birthday, was, surfing with us every year. I mean, that's true loyalty, right? I mean, and he became one of our biggest advocates, and being able to identify who those people are, who those guests are, and how much we're working with and how much we value them. Like, we actually started this, like, before I left, we created this whole like loyalty program, and we actually built tools around customer loyalty, right? So if you came, you're going to be a return customer, you get discount this. And so we actually started building, I helped build a lot of these like sort of email automation and customer loyalty programs, so that we could make sure we're getting more return customers. And that actually became a metric that we looked at, was like, are we increasing our customer loyalty? And same thing for SaaS, right? If you're getting more of these return customers, they're going to be your best salespeople, more so than you, more so than anybody else. So, yeah, these concepts, like, they cross over onboarding and activation, setting boundaries with customers and building that trust so that you're the ones guiding them. And this concept of advocacy and loyalty, I just thought they work well in both, and it just reiterated the fact they're as important in hospitality as they are in SaaS.
Okay, great. So I understand it was very human centric, and the direct relationship with with your customers, but you try to also put some processes to, follow up and continue the experience before. Start before and continue after the surf camp moments. The moment they were with you there. So how maybe you did not do that at that time, but now with the some months after, how would you automate all that process, and what would you do, with your, with different maybe resources and budgets or tools or agents? How would you organize it differently today?
Are you talking about the surf camp specifically, the surf retreat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do a few different things. I mean, for starters, which is a project I'm working on now, I'm still doing. I'm still remote, but I'm implementing this for them. Is the the reservation system is sort of, for me, it's almost like akin to the ERP or the CRM. Like that's the foundation, right? That's where all the data lives, where I know who's coming in and when. But having a reservation system, number one would be, again, I'm building it now, but the time I was there, it was still like WhatsApps and, things like that. But that would be like day one, sort of critical, right? You can't run a business without having this automation stuff. From there, I would say it's probably twofold. Two things I would build on top of that engine. One is more related to kind of marketing. So we spent a lot of time, and we actually even hired, these marketing teams to help us build, Instagram following, create posts, things like that. But we didn't really have the attribution that we wanted. So we didn't really have the visibility. Like we knew that when we published stuff, things were going well, but we couldn't really say it was like to this demographic when we sent this marketing campaign to, maybe it was to a area in Asia, and that worked out really well. So really optimizing marketing, which is typically, I have to say, like, I mean, I grew up surfing my whole life, and a lot of surf camps, they're lifestyle oriented companies. They don't always, they don't run on the latest tools and everything. It's a lifestyle that you want to live more so than running a business. But I would go back and start looking at, okay, now, if we're spending 5K, like where do we want to double down that? Do we even need to be spending that much a month on these ads, right? Or what are we getting back from them? Which reservations are directly coming from these ads that we're running? So just like we do in SaaS, right? Like where's our marketing budget going? But that's probably one of the biggest opportunities I'd see in like a lot of these surf camps is, you spend money on acquiring customers, but you really have to optimize what's working and what's not. And is it really driving reservations? And then on the end side of that is what we talked about, this customer loyalty. Again, like not much of that exists. I mean, some maybe bigger retreats and surf camps, those are tools that are important, but is keeping people in the loop, right? Like, so I'm currently helping them build like some newsletters, right? And getting people in the loop, automating some of this. Like I know when customer X leaves, I know in 2 days they're going to get this curated email that tells them, to remind them to review us on Google, that they have a 10% discount when they come back, that if they refer someone else, they also get a loyalty points. So kind of, again, creating this like customer for life loop. So we're not just about getting people in and out, but it's like, how do I actually build is more of like this community that people want to come back and tell their friends about, and treat it more like a business. That's sort of a SaaS business, right? It's not just selling. It's like, how are we keeping and growing our customer base, like we talked about? And investing in tools to do that. So I'd say those are like the three components that I would, and I'm kind of currently help building, because that's something that, they didn't have in the past. Critical points for a business, for surf.
Absolutely. And so do you find end-to-end tools that are able to manage all these processes, or do you build themselves? I mean, yourself with the best of breed or connecting, or do you leverage AI and AI agents to do so?
It's a combination. I mean, I don't think there's one tool that can do everything. I think there's some great tools out there that, again, have APIs and you can kind of really easily connect different products, from payment to reservations to attribution from marketing. So where reservations are coming from, to email automation like MailChimp. So currently I'm using different tools and different software, and it's really tying all of them together to be able to have like an end-to-end, outcome and process. Yeah, it's really more tying them together. And you mentioned AI, and AI is kind of, it's everywhere in a sense. It can be leveraged in many different aspects. Currently, it's helping more in creating copy and more like admin related tasks than it is on like fully automating like reservations and all these other tools. But it's there, and like we're using it a little bit, but we're still trying to figure out how to use it like at scale or fully automate some of these agents as it relates to the surf camp.
Okay. And so, you've been on your island for, let's say, last 2 years and so, which is the time where AI really started to now surge and become not only now hype, but I mean in everyone's and every business important. So how do you see that? I mean, it's interesting to have a perspective when you discovered where we were when you come back to now Europe and to let's say normal business that we are more used to. And so how do
Yeah.
you see that, and how do you see the potential that it will have also for the future for SaaS companies and for the rest of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you're right. I mean, it was a culture shock. I mean, I kind of been out of the loop. I mean, I know some of this stuff existed, but I was like, I wasn't really using it that much in the day to day. And I kind of got back and was like, testing out different tools. And I was like, wow, this has evolved quite a bit in the last few years and still evolving every day. Right. Yeah, it's been a massive jump. Right. And I think most companies and, people I talk to in my circles, like everyone's still trying to figure out how to properly leverage it at scale. But again, it's all these little, initially it's just kind of tackling admin tasks, right? So in the context of customer success, it's great. I think it's great that a lot of this administrative time and functions where you used to have to like take notes on a call and then upload them into Salesforce, and maybe 10% of your job or of your time was in administrative, doings, and that can really be shrunk down with a really nice process where, like, even as we speak right now, I probably have an AI note taker, summarizing our call and all the key points, and you can automate that to like go to Notion or to go to HubSpot right into your CRM. So, the ability to have just better visibility into an account to look at it from a SaaS perspective, right? Where now if any department has a conversation with a customer and it's just being automated, translated by AI and put into automatically being uploaded into, a CRM, you've really got something that you've got automated information, and full information that doesn't rely on manual time and manual production anymore. So that's kind of like that first bit is just getting rid of admin stuff, but it's evolving so much now that you can really start using it in, I've seen as much as like people, or you're creating your own QBR decks, right? Or you can even upload a bunch of big data set and say, where do I need to focus today on these customers? And it can tell you based on all these things. So it's really changing the landscape quickly. I haven't seen, I'm not really aware of like these large, in production at scale deployments of AI and CS specifically, although I know they're all being worked on. But I've seen a lot of individuals, just everyone's using it. Everyone you talk to, like no one's not using CS, whether it's even crafting an email, creating a QBR deck, or like helping you run your day to day. And in some cases, just like, I've seen some use cases or read some articles about people using it to self-manage themselves. So I saw an article the other day about, this concept of like CSMs almost self-managing, and that even the role as a manager, sort of these like mid-level roles of managers, and not that they're going away completely, but today they're there. Tomorrow, it's like maybe you're just a player coach because really you don't need like just a full-time manager. And, a few years from now, you never know, it could just be fully automated. So it's an interesting, can be seen scary depending on what perspective you look at it from. One thing I think we can't deny, we can't predict where it's going to go, but we can't deny that it's definitely automating a lot of things. And in a way, it's allowing more time for the important sort of strategic human touch, which always still needs to be there, whether you're selling software or even just, renewing and expanding. I mean, that's a relationship based, relationship that's always going to exist. AI can just give you more time to do more of that, right? So it's really also separating and segmenting out sort of like, are you really being strategic in your accounts, or are you just being more administrative? So it really can strengthen you in a way, but it's taken away a lot of all these other tasks, menial tasks that are being done daily.
Okay, yeah. And we've seen, I mean, there's a lot, and we've been able to read a lot of perspective and opinion on how it's going to impact also the SaaS industry and the SaaS vendors. Yeah. Any what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it is. I mean, there's a lot of things you can read. The SaaS apocalypse, right? If you want to go all the way to one extreme, that SaaS is dead. I mean, I wouldn't go to that extreme, or at least not now, or just based on maybe this will take a longer time. But one thing that's undeniable that's affecting companies today, is the licensing model, and that's something that you need to pay attention to, right? Traditional SaaS was all seat-based, selling seats, right? So if I'm selling more seats, that's directly tied to my valuation. So if your company's growing, I'm going to sell you more seats. But that's exactly the opposite of what's happening, right? I mean, the bigger trend we're seeing is companies are being leaner, right? Because of this massive transformation and of AI, that you can do more with less. Like, it's not necessarily that usage-based or seat-based pricing is sort of going out, and it's not really helping the multiples, these sort of multiples on sales and on earnings that SaaS companies have had in the past. Right now, it just makes them, it's almost like table stakes. Like, this is just the bare minimum now, and this more like usage-based, adoption or usage-based metric is becoming the norm. And there's some companies out there, I know, like Snowflake, and I even see like, ServiceNow is like trying to move to a bit more of these usage-based metrics, and those will continue to get probably like higher multiples, higher valuations. So like, that's something that's impacting today. I mean, that's changing just in the past few months. You've seen companies like that and trying to switch over, or at least move more of their new product lines to be more usage-based. And that really changes, a lot of the unit economics, but also how traditional software has been sold, and how we support that. So that's definitely something that I think is undeniable. If it goes full SaaS apocalypse and it's going to go away altogether, I don't know. I think it definitely makes it more challenging for, maybe these small niche vendors who traditionally come up with a very niche SaaS product. But it very maybe a thin line that could just kind of like, slip in there and at a department level. I think nowadays, if it's not enough value or not robust enough, you could probably build it with AI, and you're probably not going to sell as much as you used to. But I think if you're like an ERP vendor or a CRM vendor, and you've got years of these like, deep products with like, that have been tried and tested, right? Like a CRM, you want to be able to trust it. Like, I don't think a company like Salesforce or HubSpot, they're just going to disappear overnight. That's just me, but crazier things have happened. But I think the value is really going to be is like how you can actually build, use AI on top of across all these different products, right? If you have ERP, CRM, all these tools, is what's the glue that puts all that together, and that they can kind of, talk to each other. So I think that's where the AI opportunity really lies, is like sitting a layer on top of those. But those tools have almost become just sort of like foundational, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, which is, I guess, super important and valuable for customer success, but these call recording and the automatically inputted into the CRM or the customer success platforms and so on. Do you see any other game changer things that are now powered by AI in the customer success environments?
Customer success environment, game changers. Well, the closest thing I've seen to like game changer again is sort of like you're removing a lot of what what does the CSM actually have to do? Like the daily job is starting to change. And some tools are getting to the point where they can really, they drive enough sort of insight and tell you what to do, right? They're telling you, this is what you need to do today. Based on, what they see in usage drops or whatever. It's kind of like narrating your day to day as opposed to like you driving it. And that just kind of begs the question, like how much, if that goes at that pace, like, how much is AI going to really be able to automate? Like, maybe it's 50% of the job. Is it going to be 60 or 70% tomorrow? But I don't know. I haven't seen it fully automated in CS, man. I think for now, I think the best I've seen is just like automating a lot of these admin tasks.
Okay.
But that's just from what I've seen.
Okay, so more to come probably in the coming years.
Probably by the time we finish the conversation, there already something came out. So,
Absolutely. Well, okay. Well, that's, thanks a lot, David. It was super interesting
My
discussion, and great to get your insights and your perspective on customer success. So thanks a lot, and we'll continue to stay in touch. And if you want to add anything, of course, feel free. Otherwise, let's
great talking to you. Thanks, Thibaut.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Oops. Stopping the recording. Working a lot. Recording stop. Yes.